This Week in Radio Tech, episode 250, is brought to you by Lavo and the new Crystal Clear virtual radio console. Crystal Clear is the radio console with a multi-touch touchscreen interface. By the new Omnia 7 FM, HD, and streaming audio processor with Undo technology. Omnia 7 is a mid-priced audio processor with the sound and features you love. And by the new Axia Fusion AOIP mixing console, packed with features and capabilities refined from over a decade's worth of IP audio experience. Hey, helicopters, high-speed boat ferries, and bridges to nowhere, they're all part of Rich Parker's radio engineering travel routine at Coast Alaska. Headquartered in Juneau, Alaska, Rich maintains transmitters in Sitka, Wrangell, Petersburg, and Ketchikan. And after being there for 1 year, he already has some war stories to tell. Welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. This is the show where we talk about radio technology, everything from one end of the earth to the other, from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower and the end of the stream. I'm Kirk Harnack. Glad you're here. This is a special episode, special to me. We have made it, and if you've been with us since the beginning, you have too, through 250 episodes. This is episode 250, and being an episode divisible by 10, it's also a War Stories episode, and we have got an engineering warrior is our guest today on the show. You're going to really like it. You've heard from him before. Keep the secret for just a minute. As usual, our co-host on the show is here. He's in a fantastically interesting place, and I've got to join you on that balcony just as soon as I can get back to New York. Chris Tobin is here, the best-dressed engineer in radio, and today he is the warmest-dressed engineer around. Chris, how are you?
I'm well. It's a great day in New York. It's a little chilly. The sky is a crystal clear blue, if you will, or vibrant blue. It's great. There's a great sunset taking place on the west side if you happen to have the opportunity. And also, I have to say hello to a friend, William, at CUNY TV, who happened to come across one of our early episodes when we were audio only. And it's like, wow, I totally forgot you guys were doing it for this long.
Wow, that was a long time ago. The audio, we did 20 episodes that were audio only way back when. Oh my goodness, how about that? Hey, by the way, is my mic and video like way out of sync, or are they okay?
To me, they're out of sync like a lot. But
yeah, isn't that weird?
I can't trust what I see because I'm getting a return feed, so I have to call the studio ops and say, "Can you see him in sync?"
Hey, while we're in the show, I may switch cameras and see if that helps out at all. Hey, again, welcome in. It's Kirk, it's Chris, and you, and a War Stories episode of This Week in Radio Tech, and our guest is a gentleman who has moved from one end of the country to the other. We've had him on before. It's Richard Parker, now with Coast Alaska. Richard, where are you coming to us from?
I'm sitting in the production studio of the Juneau studios of KTOO, KRNN, and KXLL. We're on 360 Egan Drive, looking right out over the channel where the cruise ships come in. And it's a beautiful 42 and rainy day. I've been here for a year, and I said if I ever wrote a book about my first year in Juneau, it would have to be titled 42 and Raining.
42 and raining. That's the weather report. I wonder if I could be a weatherman in Juneau. Would that be a hard job?
You could. You could probably pre-tape it ahead, and for like a week, go to Hawaii. Hey, actually, we had a big snowstorm last night, and then it started raining.
Yeah, that's a little unusual because your weather is a bit like Seattle, but a little colder, right?
Correct. And my brother was telling me it was 65, and he goes, "Where's our snow?" And I said, "Well, we just got some last night."
Wow.
Our second snow of the year.
Hey, I want to tell our viewers and listeners, now, if you're a listener to this show, thanks for being here. The show is going to be a lot of visual this time. So I hope you put up with that. If you are listening and you want to watch the pictures that Rich is going to be telling us about, then get the video version. If you're watching live, welcome in. You're going to see it all live. I asked Rich Parker to come on and give us a feel of what it's like to engineer in Alaska. Now, on the one hand, you're not up in Barrow, Alaska, or Point Barrow, or up on the northern coast. You're in an area that's a bit climatically a bit nicer than we usually think of Alaska, but still there are challenges. We're going to get into the show here very shortly. Rich has a lot of pictures to share with us and a little story and description about a lot of these pictures. So hang tight for that. We're going to show a lot of pictures on this episode. And so, Rich, you're going to be really busy telling us about these and answering questions from me and Chris. I want to jump right in, though, and tell you about our first sponsor of This Week in Radio Tech. It's our friends at Lavo, L-A-W-O, Lavo. They make audio consoles. And one of the consoles that they make, Lavo typically makes these great big audio consoles for TV trucks and big installed sound venues and studio recording. Well, this is a smaller console. They have a crystal line of consoles that are intended for radio stations, and this is the Crystal Clear console. It uses the same DSP mixing engine as the Crystal console series. So that goes in a rack, and that's where your audio inputs go into your mics and your stereo line inputs and your AES inputs. Those are all go into this DSP unit in the rack. But for control, instead of a physical control surface, what you get is a multi-touch touchscreen monitor that you can move several faders all at the same time while you push buttons. And more typically, you'd be probably pushing a couple of faders or pushing a couple of buttons at the same time, or have your finger at the ready to push a button while you move a fader up or down. And that's where the clear part of the Crystal Clear console comes into play. The Crystal Clear console has all the usual things that you'd find in a small console. It can take up to 24 audio inputs, although 8 can be on faders at any one given time. It has a Program 1 bus, Program 2, record bus. Of course, it has pre-fader level, or as we would call preview or Q. And one of the cool things about being a touchscreen console is it's software driven. And that means that the buttons, the options buttons on the screen are completely contextual. If you have a microphone input and you push the options button, you don't get options there that don't apply to that. You only get the options that apply to what that fader is doing or capable of doing. And that's one of the cool things about having a console whose interface exists in software. Now, of course, the specs of the console are fantastic. The audio specs are terrific. You can expect, no better audio anywhere than the state-of-the-art audio mixing engine, the state-of-the-art inputs and outputs. The console also does audio over IP. It adheres to the Ravenna standard, which includes most of the AES 67 standard as well. So it's AES 67 compatible, and it's totally Ravenna compliant. You can hook it up to an AOIP studio, to other devices that are also audio over IP. I encourage you to check this out. Check it out at Lavo, LAWO.com, and look for radio consoles and look for the Crystal Clear console. If this idea of controlling a console with a touchscreen appeals to you, then you're going to want to find out about this console. It's very popular. The Crystal console has been very popular with a lot of radio stations, and the Crystal Clear builds on that tradition with this touchscreen console. Thanks to Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, without a lot of further ado, I think we ought to jump right into it. Let's get one part of the story straight. Rich, I mentioned that you traveled a long way to go take a job in Alaska. Can you give us a little elevator speech about what you did and how you got to Alaska?
Okay. Well, when I was very young, I took a magnet and I put a nail into a light socket and watched the sparks, and that's kind of think where it all started. Then years later, I ended up as director of engineering at Vermont Public Radio. I was there for 17 years, based out of Colchester, which is near Burlington, and we had a pretty big crop of stations there. And through a long set of events, a friend called and said, there's an opening for a director of engineering in Alaska. Why don't you apply for that? And I said, oh, that's just crazy. So, why would I do that? But they kept calling me and they kept talking to me, and I kept looking at what they were doing. And to be perfectly honest, I told you this earlier, Kirk, that I was a little nervous about even reaching out to it because there were people who I felt like they were giants in the industry, Chuck Lukaitis and Matt Holmes, and people that I really looked up to, but they said, no, you'll be great. They need you here. So my wife said, why don't you just send them a resume? Why don't you just apply? We were empty nesters again. Some of you know my son had leukemia for 7 years and passed away in 2008. There wasn't any grandkids or anything to hold us in any one place. I liked the job at VPR, and I liked the people a lot. It was very interesting, but this just kept kind of coming back. And so we flew out for an interview. It was January. It was dark. It was 42 and raining. It was like it always is. And I was kind of flabbergasted because the question that they asked me in the interview, the first question was not about what I'd done technically. Of course, I'd sent my CV and all that. But they just looked at me and they said, "Do you think you could live here?" So that was sort of interesting. I thought, well, oh, I think so. Yeah. Why? What is there something? Is there vampires or what should we know here? No, but Juneau is very isolated in a way. It's a town of about 45,000 people, maybe 40,000. It's on the Gastineau Channel, and behind it's a giant ice field. At the north end of town is the Mendenhall Glacier, and then further up is Herbert Glacier. At the south end of town, there's a dead end. There's about, I think, 46 or 49 miles of road north and south, and that's pretty much it. So it's not unlike living on an island. And so here I am. I packed up lock, stock, and barrel, sold the house in Vermont, got rid of many, many things, but the cats and the carriers, and here we are.
Indeed. Can you drive to or from Juneau? Can you get anywhere else now?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we can get to the north end of Juneau where there's a nice sign that says end of the road, and we can go south, and there's another sign that says end of the road. Basically, the closest you could come to driving to Juneau is to drive up through Canada, through Yukon, come down across into a town called Skagway, and then you can put your vehicle on a ferry boat and the several-hour ferry ride down to Juneau. And, basically, to get to any of our stations here, I'll just give you a quick geography lesson. I don't know if I can hold this up, and I don't know if anybody can see it, but this is Southeast Alaska. And it's, I'm having a hard time because it's backwards. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
It's like a mirror. So anyway, from up here all the way down is where I cover from Juneau and north. There's some translators up north, and then it goes all the way down to, to the east or to the west is Sitka, which is on an island, on Baranof Island, which is out at the far west end of the chain. And then below that is Petersburg, Wrangell, and then at the very bottom is Ketchikan. And that's, I guess, about 350, 400 miles. So every time I go to a station, I have to fly or take a ferry. I haven't taken the ferry much, but in the summer, there's what they call a fast ferry that's about a 4-hour trip to Sitka. That's normally about an 8 or 10-hour trip. But the fast ferry goes about 35, 40 knots, and so it makes a nice quick trip. So that's kind of fun. But normally it's flying jets, a lot of Air Alaska jets, 737s mostly, but then a few, the smaller Alaska Seaplane Company, Harris Air, some of those, the small twin prop airplanes that I hop from place to place and island to island. In fact, in 2 weeks, I'll be hopping from Juneau to Sitka, turning around to Sitka, coming back through Cake, which is a small island where there's a translator, and then hopping over to Petersburg, working on a Z4 there that needs some repairs, a couple of days there, and then the Harris Air small 2-engine plane that comes back and forth every day lands in Petersburg at around 11 o'clock, and then the next stop is Wrangell, and I'll hop it on in a couple of days and go to Wrangell and work on their transmitter down there and work on their studios. And then I'll take an Air Alaska flight back, which will go down through Ketchikan and then come back up to Juneau. So,
wow. So just getting around the transmitter sites sounds pretty challenging.
It can be. I'm based in Juneau at the offices of KTOO Radio and TV, and I guess they're the sort of the big city station, as far as it goes. I mean, it's not Anchorage. Anchorage is about 900 miles away, and of course that's it's a big city. Half, I don't know. 200,000-300,000 people, I think. And as part of Coast Alaska, we provide support for all of the public radio stations in the Southeast Alaska area. Most of them. And fortunately, 3 of our clients are here in Juneau, and that's KTOO, which is the news and information station, KXLL, which is a kind of a modern progressive, kind of like KEXP and some of those. And then there's KRNN, which is the arts and culture station. KTOO is the transmission facility is located I can see it outside the window. It's on top of the federal building nearby. And then KRNN and KXLL are on a site that's across the channel, which we can also see from our office. So those are easy too. And there's 2 translators, in the area that I can, drive to a point and then walk up a trail, maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles.
Walk. Hey, a good intro. So why don't we jump right into the pictures, because I know that we have a lot to look at. And Chris Tobin, you jump in here too, looking at these. Andrew, if you're ready to show some pictures, I almost don't care where you start, because we didn't really talk about this a whole lot. Pick one and let's go with it, and we'll get Rich to tell us what we're looking at. Now there's a cluster of pictures. Let's get one on there.
Okay, so that's in Petersburg. That's what they call fish radio, KFSK in Petersburg. Petersburg's a big fishing town, a huge Norwegian kind of heritage. There's a Sons of Norway Hall. There's the you can see what they brought. That's their ID thing that's on the console.
The legal ID. Oh, wow.
Legal ID.
Okay.
This is a little bit out of order, but this is a pickup truck, and what's in the back of that is the fan assembly from a Z4 transmitter that was shipped up by air from Wrangell. The fan failed on their Z4 here in Petersburg, and I remembered that they had a spare Z4 down in Wrangell, so I called the station manager and asked her what we could do. Now, you have to understand, this is Alaska. Cindy Sweat is the manager at Wrangell's STK. She's about 5 foot nothing. She hopped in her truck, four-wheel drive pickup truck, and a bunch of tools, went out to the edge of the field, walked across the frozen part of the field that the truck couldn't drive on, unbolted the 7/16 bolts on the fan assembly on the Z4, dragged it out, got it into her truck, had somebody help her. Actually, she put it on a sled, dragged it across the frozen ground, had somebody help her put it in her sled, put it in her truck, and took it to the air freight at Alaska Airlines, and we picked it up here. And then put it in on the Z4 that's in Petersburg and got it back on the air. We were operating on a small backup transmitter at that point, about 150 watt crap that I had brought down in a flight case.
And that assembly, as you said, is not light. And
it's
so
about
this is your female station manager at this station did this. Wow.
Correct. She's also the same one that over the phone, sent me pictures and wielded the screwdriver and took apart the Wheatstone console because it had failed and was pulling out modules, and I was talking her through it. And eventually I had to go there, but she's great. The people down here are very, very smart, very, very capable, willing to jump in. And if I can help them over the phone, give them some support, say, well, send me a picture, do this, do that, be careful, don't, make sure you unplug this and do that. I mean, they're just great. So it makes it a lot easier. Ultimately, I had to get on the plane and go there, the same way with Petersburg. But we were able to do a lot of pre-work, because one of the logistical challenges is you don't just get a part shipped overnight. There's no such thing as overnight. I mean, 2-3 days maybe. You can manage it if it's small. Bigger things have to come up on a barge. So part of that process of working with her and doing everything I could remotely was to actually try to determine what it is we needed, and it turned out we did need a part. But I didn't want to have just something sent without being pretty sure about it.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry about my camera here. I'm trying to restart things and let it get better. There we go. It's a little bit better now. Let's move on with the pictures if we can. If we can move, we got a lot to move through.
You can move through. This is the Z4. It's that was in the shop. That's just I had to unhook everything and hook up the crown. There's a switch up there, and what that does, that goes to an old Continental, or actually it's a Rockwell Collins older transmitter that has not been in service, and that may be something I'll have to reserve. You can just go through these fairly quickly.
Looks like that transmitter is a shipping container.
No, it is a shipping container. These are just some shots in the studio. There's another shot of the control room, and there's the older. There's the old transmitter. So
pretty confined space.
It is a picture of the shot. That's a shipping container. It was purpose built, sent in. They put a roof on it and mounted it, and that worked out really well. Actually, it's got a fan and everything, and it's a pretty nice building. We don't have the kind of extremes that say maybe somebody in Florida might have. In the sense that it gets cold, but it might get down to 0. If you back up one, I'll just dig real quick. I'll tell you something about this. That tower was built for the station new by the cell companies. They wanted to put a tower there, and it turns out that I'm sorry, I take that back. They wanted to put a swimming pool and recreation center. The school's actually right in front of it. You can't see it. And what they found out was that where they wanted to put it was right over one of the guy anchors of the existing tower. So everybody worked out a deal between the town and cell companies and all that, and they built this really nice self-supporting tower. So that KFSK is on.
Yeah, and so no guy wire, so no problem there.
The one before it is just some math that are it holds some STL and some communications things. That's the building where the station is. Okay. And then that next picture, Matt Holmes was telling me that green box is the original transmitter building, but they sort of just kept it around. And this is a Shively antenna that came up. It's a horizontal only, and it's for the translator, which is on top of Lindenberg Peak, which is on top of, which is outside of town and only a helicopter ride. So we had to, that got damaged. I should have put up pictures, but there's some amazing pictures that came from Matt Holmes of the radome just completely smashed by ice.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So we had them relocate the mast up on the roof, and then flew this up and put it in. If you flip through a little bit, you might be able to. Yeah. So there's the site, and if you'll see that protrusion on top of it, that's the door, that brown protrusion. So that's about 25 feet up, and then the door. And the reason is because that gets filled up with snow in the wintertime.
Are you approaching this in a helicopter?
Back up. I'll tell you something about this just real quick. So that fills up with snow, and then you have to. There's an axe and a pry bar, and you have to chop ice and everything to make sure the door will open. Then you climb down about a 20-foot ladder to get into the transmitter shack in the wintertime.
You go in through a door on the roof because there's too much snow, and you climb down into the building.
Yeah. Now, one thing about this shot, I took this shot. This is a helicopter flying us around, and we got up there, and then he flew in a circle around the top of the mountain. And I said, "What are you doing?" And without a bit of irony, he said, "Oh, bear check."
Bear check. Bear check.
Yeah, bear check. There's a helicopter. Yeah, because he said you don't want to just land and then find out there's bears up there.
Bears like yellow helicopter.
That's the other helicopter. That's a smaller one. And that's downtown Petersburg. So, but
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. So it was a bear check. It lands on a platform. I don't know. I think I maybe didn't include that picture, but it lands on a platform that's about as I don't know, 10 by 12, 15 by 16. I mean, it's just out there hanging in space.
What about when there's a lot of snow? Is this platform on the
ground?
because
it sticks out away from the building on piers. So in other words, it's you know what I mean. It's hard to explain, but it's
Cool. All right, what's next picture wise?
Well, that's downtown Petersburg, showing you how there's a very Norwegian background. Now this is a jet boat, and that particular trip I had to get from Wrangell. I'd been doing some work in Wrangell, and to get up to Petersburg, the quickest way is to take this jet boat.
Okay.
Which was actually, in a way, about as fast as flying or faster and it was raining. And if you look straight ahead, way up in the distance, we're going to the point up there where Banana Point is called in Petersburg, and then it's about 15 miles out of town. The station manager picked me up. Interestingly enough, that trip they dropped me off. It was raining. I had a bunch of tools, a couple of flight cases, and there was no one there. He was going to come meet me. It was raining, and I realized that in like much of Alaska, and the same as Vermont, there was no cell service, and there was no one there.
Okay.
And I was by myself with two big flight cases, waving at the boat that was leaving, and I thought, well, that's interesting. But about 10 minutes later, the manager showed up in his truck. He'd just gotten delayed a little bit, but that was
one of those. We're done. I'm sorry, Rich. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying it was just one of those moments.
Andrew says we're done with that album. So we're going to, Andrew, I'm going to let you pick out the next album since it's hard to, Anyway, you pick out the next album. We'll be ready to go here. Hey, for those of you tuning in, you're watching or listening to This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 250th episode, War Stories with Rich Parker. I'm Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tobin. Chris, are you still with us or did you fall off the building?
No, still here. Okay. Checking out the pictures and enjoying it.
Aren't these pictures amazing? And I mean, to get to, gee.
Well, the last time Richard was on with us, the one takeaway I will say with the conversation, and he reminds us today with these pictures, is you're isolated. You have to plan accordingly, and be prepared for stuff that you and I, take for granted, being closer to urban centers, and it's interesting, and it's just it's fascinating, and I like it.
Oh, that's good. I will say the one thing is it's a lot easier to find parking.
I bet it is.
Well, but if you need a part, if you need a part, we're both at the same disadvantage. Rich has no nearby Radio Shack, and now neither do we.
That's true. Yeah. So anyway, so the slide he has up, that's the sign that's in the airport at Ketchikan.
Yeah, let's see that.
A very famous. If everybody remembers that the Ted Stevens, very famous senator from Alaska, wanted to build a bridge.
Yes.
And he was roundly criticized, and everybody made jokes about it being a bridge to nowhere. Well, the fact of the matter is, it's a bridge to the airport and a very big island that could have been developed very nicely, but the political pressure was so great that they never built that bridge. So now, when you land in Ketchikan, you actually have to take a ferry across the channel to downtown Ketchikan from the airport.
Yeah, it's a
So
shame
they
that
put
these
that up.
things get so
Yeah.
politicized. I remember that,
Oh,
and oh yeah, we shouldn't waste our money on a bridge to nowhere. Well, you know what? It's nowhere, but it could be somewhere.
it could be somewhere, and it was the airport.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So
What's
that
next?
other picture is just the front of the building. That's KRBD. They call it Rainbird Radio. Chuck Lukadis had a lot to do with that station. He lived in that area for many, many years. And that's their new facility that was built a few years back, and it's across the street from a very nice library, and it's a much higher up in town. So anyway,
Cool. What's next,
I don't
Andrew?
know. I don't know what you have there, but
Andrew, what's next?
anyway.
He's
Um,
looking.
the interesting thing, the challenging thing up there in all of Southeast is that in Vermont, I had to deal with a lot of ice and snow. In fact, I'll tell you, during the interview, the manager here, one of the people doing the interview, asked me. He said, "Well, can you? How do you feel about remote sites and going up to remote sites and that kind of thing?" And I said, "Well, let me show you some pictures." And I showed him a picture of one of our translator sites on Bolton Mountain up in Robbins Mountain up in Bolton, Vermont. It's about 1,200 feet, and it's about 1.2 miles trail. And the day we had to go up there, it was complete and solid glare ice. So we put on
Polaris.
the
Okay.
the spikes, yeah, the micro spikes, and we put the spectrum analyzer and the exciter and the backpacks and hiked up. And I showed him those, and he goes, "Okay, yeah, good, all right, fine." You know. And there is one site here that's about the same distance, but it
Yeah, what's
doesn't
this? So
ice
there's a
up.
BE transmitter in there. What else?
Yeah. So this is, let's see, where is this? This is in Ketchikan. Yeah, that's a BE, and there's there was an MD1, I think it was a digital. Anyway, so that's the BE, a lot of BEs. That's just a nice shot of the wiring job the predecessor did in the terminal blocks in the studio.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you can flip through some. Okay, this is just some interesting areas. A totem pole park, a lot of beautiful totem poles in Ketchikan. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
one of the
Okay.
benefits of flying around. There's a shot from the airport. And you can see that car in front of me. We're waiting to get on the ferry, and it goes across that channel of water in the distance to get to Ketchikan. So that's
Okay.
kind of what's going on here.
What's next?
Don't I have a few shots in that album of the antenna and the site, but I don't know how much interest there is. But there, you
Oh, new
know,
album. Okay. Okay.
yeah, we have some challenges there. I mean, it's they lost their generator, and the generator tech said that he thought it maybe just wasn't getting exercised often enough, and it just built up moisture and ruined the stator in there. So they're gonna have to replace that. Okay, so now this is in Sitka,
Sitka.
and
Okay.
Sitka,
Behind the building, there's a bridge to somewhere.
there's a bridge somewhere, and I mean it's the same kind of bridge. It literally goes to the airport. I think
Ah.
the difference there politically is that one, on that other island, there's an old army base and Air Force kind of staging area, and there's a private school called the Mount Edgecombe High School. It's a boarding high school. So that sign you can't read it really, but that talks about the old cable landing that was coming up from down south from Seattle. This is the library. This is the inside of the station. The whole inside of the station is like a record and CD library. They still have
Wow.
a lot of turntables, a lot of albums, a lot of volunteers. Um, Mostly volunteers, and there's just a shot of the harbor in Sitka.
Beautiful.
And there's the satellite dish. You can see it's an unusual place under the bridge there.
Why would it be
And
under a bridge? Just
well, many of these things, I tell people that like I said, if I was going to write a book, it was going to be 42 and raining, and the theme song, I guess, that would play under it would be Bob Seger's "Against the Wind," searching for clues, searching for mysteries without any clues. Working on
okay.
mysteries without any clues. It's
Yeah.
a lot of times there's just things that were documented well, and a lot of times there's things that aren't documented well, and there's people that have been there for a while and people that are new and maybe only a year or more, there than I have been, and so there's many things we don't know. Chuck sent me a lot of memos, which was really nice. Sort of, here's the history. Here's how this got built. Here's why that got built. Information from people like Don Rinker, who worked on the transmitter here. So, there's a fair bit of like, wow, wonder why that is like that. And some of it was political, some of it was economic, some of it was opportunity, but it's there under the bridge. And I had to replace the LNB. The whole situation was really bad. The EBNO was just really, really low. They were getting dropouts and lots of problems with their signals. So
Which satellite are you picking up there?
that's the NPR satellite. Galaxy,
Ah,
I should know this right off the top of my head, 6, maybe.
okay, okay.
Somebody will write in and say, no, you fool, it's Galaxy 12. Anyway, I'm sure I'll think
Yes,
of it as soon as
outdoor F connector was less than pretty, wasn't it?
it was
Wasn't
really bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a fiber box at the thing because it's quite a ways away from the studio, so they have a fiber converter that does the L band to fiber and then comes back into the station. Yeah. And so one of the problems there was that that's a really particularly nasty picture. So I had to replace all that. One of the particular interesting things was that the signal was also the fiber was too hot, and I called the manufacturer in Georgia, and the guy was really nice. And he goes, well, you just need to put an optical attenuator on there. And I said, well, I'm in Sitka, Alaska. I'm not really sure when I can get one of those, and I'm going to be here for 3 or more days. And he goes, oh, well, not a problem. He says, you got any wood dowels there? And he goes, yeah, take a piece. And you see that on the left there. There's a piece of 3/8. Go back to that picture just a little bit if you can. It's a piece of 3/8 dowel on the left. Yeah. He says, take the fiber and wrap it 3 or 4 or 5, 6 times around 3/8 dowel, tape it down, and watch the meter. It'll go from red to green, and then if you twist it more, it'll go back to red. So find the sweet spot in the middle. And it turns out that twisting fiber like that around a known radius actually provides a really good optical attenuator. So there it is.
Wow.
So that's a little bit of a war story. So and it was amazing because it actually worked, and we got everything working, and I didn't have to order anything. I mean, we could someday, but that's just a signal strength meter that we were looking at the Galaxy 16. See, there it is. And there's a shot after I had done some work the other last week. It's a splitter. It's this typical splitter that NPR sends, and that's a shot from the dish out, into the channel. And one of the reasons was we were trying to figure out if tenders or boats or something were driving in front of it. Was that increasing the problem or what? So, it's a lot of investigation.
By the way, that dish right there, is that pointing essentially south or southeast?
It is.
What direction are we looking at there?
Yeah, pretty. It's I'm trying to remember the NPR. Is it 96?
Okay, so it must be southeast. It's pointing to the southeast.
Yeah,
over there.
The southeast and towards the water, kind of, because we're up pretty high. We're about 56, 58. I think we're in there latitude. Another shot of the harbor. That's from the transmitter site. And then this is on top of this is a translator that's in town. It's just because of the terrain. There's the shadows in town, so there's a little translator downtown on top of that. And that's what it looks like upstairs. There's a lot of people. There's a Seventh-day Adventist station broadcaster up there. There's some other little kind of small translators up. It's the top of an apartment building right in downtown Sitka. So that's the roof. There's STL for the Seventh-day Adventist station. They do an off-air pickup. Ours does an off-air pickup of the signal down in the channel and then broadcast. So a little bit of the background. There's a shot just up the bridge looking back at the station on the right, bottom right corner. This is the Mount Edgecombe High School. This was the old, I don't know if it was Army, Air Force. Somebody probably knows better than me, but this was where they did a lot of flights in and out around Alaska before Alaska was a state, but there was quite a military presence here in World War II because of the concern about the Japanese invasion. And so the tower is on top of the control tower. The transmitter is actually in the very, very bottom of that, and it's in a long, narrow room that was actually the doors for a hangar would slide into that hole. So it was very interesting. So it's a 4-bay, and then there's a single bay that was used for HD. Unfortunately, HD is not getting a lot of traction here. It costs a lot more money, to run it, the efficiency, and a lot of the stations were finding, and it could change, but a lot of stations were finding that the people who had HD radios and were listening to HD were all we're all worked at the station. So, so it was a little bit of a problem. So so this is kind of an awkward shot, but there's my wife. She helps me take readings. She rode over on the ferry with me that time, so that was really nice. She's helping me take readings on the BE, and then this is a really, really amazing thing. There's lots of different devices like this. They have some like this around here, which I've never seen, but I'm familiar with a bunch of them. But this is an IP-based net booter. So things that get locked up, I can log in and reboot them remotely. And again, connectivity is becoming a huge issue. It wasn't something that Chuck or Matt or some of those guys had as much access to even 5 years ago, and now it's really getting great. There's another shot of the control tower. This is a high school. There's the Fairweather. There's the fast ferry. My wife and I got on that, and that's how we got to Sitka from Juneau. So it goes up the channel and around And now flying back, we came on a small plane. So there's the plane that we came back on. I think some of these shots are us going home, but then there's some other shots here in a minute of. It's really weird, isn't it? It's like, and this is the new dam where they're putting a new hydroelectric plant and raising the dam up and increasing the capacity. So,
Wow.
but we fly through this slot. This is going towards the dam. This is the slot where I thought, it's like Lost Horizon or something. I mean, you feel like you can reach down and just touch the ice.
Yeah.
They just fly right through this slot, and right there at the end of that slot, you can see how it drops off. That just drops off like, I don't know, a couple thousand feet in the lakes down below.
Wow. Wow.
Right. Yeah. There's the little planes that we fly in. And this is going to Cake. So Cake is where one of their translators is, which is a small island that's sort of on the opposite side of the island that's across from Petersburg. It's a largely native village, although there's a mixed population there. They have a high school. I just saw on the news that the high school is doing very well in the basketball tournaments. So there's an old defunct dish that maybe get resurrected again. That's for the TV service from out of Anchorage and Fairbanks, and our antennas. So that's the site. And there's the inside, just a little sort of a building that just, I don't know, like a little cooler storage building. There's the antenna. So you'll see that antenna, if you look, it's tuned pretty nicely back there on the left at about 90.1, I think. Well, the station is broadcasting at 107.1. So that explains a bit more on why the transmitter is having trouble.
Reflected power, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think it was like 10 watts out and 8 watts back or something crazy like that. So this is the high school, just to give you an idea. Beautiful high school, a lot of native art in the high school, native Alaskan art, just very, very beautiful. These are salmonberry bushes. There's these huge, big things, look like giant raspberries, sort of, and they're quite good. They grow all around. There's just another shot inside the equipment. The dish is, like I say, it's an old TV dish. It probably could be refurbished.
Cassegrain fee, yeah.
Yeah. And there we are leaving. So
we're going to have, if you just tuned in, you're listening to and watching Rich Parker. He, a year ago or so, moved to Alaska, to Juneau, working with the Coast Alaska. Sorry, Rich?
March 28th. My first day was March.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Hey, and you wouldn't know it, but Chris Tobin's here too. Hey, Chris, you still with us?
I'm still here. I'm enjoying the pictures. It's great.
I know, it's amazing.
Sitting back
and just
watching.
It needs very few questions and little comment. Rich is a great commentator on what's going on. Tells us as engineers just what we want to know. Hey, our show, this is episode number 250. It's a War Stories with Rich Parker, and he has got Rich. Now you're going to run out of pictures within the next 30 minutes, so we're going to want to hear some exciting tale of engineering daring do. Where you really saved the day. I mean, more than usual. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by my friends at Omnia and a brand new audio processor from Omnia. You've probably heard about it coming out for a while. It's the Omnia 7. Now, this is another processor designed by the infamous, he's not famous, he's infamous, Leif Clayson. Leif Clayson, a lot of you know about Leif from his software processor called Breakaway and his Omnia 9 processor that has just been selling like hotcakes, and that just means a lot of engineers are liking it and putting it on their station. Well, the Omnia 7 is a new version that is more affordable. It has a little bit less power and a little bit fewer options, but still, man, I would be proud to have this station on this processor on my stations in Mississippi and American Samoa. I'm going to have to see what I can do about that. The Omnia 7 is just packed with features, as any Leif Clayson processor is going to be packed with features. Omnia, it has Leif's exclusive undo audio restoration technology. We've talked about this before on the show. We had Hans von Zutphen on the show a few weeks ago to talk about undo technology that literally restores audio that got clipped off typically in the mastering process. It has a psychoacoustically controlled distortion masking FM clipper. That's a lot to say, but it's just another thing that makes the audio sound better while still being plenty loud, printing well on the radio, giving you fantastic competitive loudness with other stations. It has a two-band, not a single band, but a two-band final look-ahead limiter for HD radio and for streaming. That's right. You can use this processor as your main FM processor, but you can also put out audio that has been processed specifically for bitrate reduced streams, and that would include HD radio or for over the internet streaming. It's got the full Omnia toolbox. It's got a digital oscilloscope, an FFT spectrum analyzer, a real-time analyzer. It's got remote client software that connects right to it and lets you control all the processor functions and lets you see all those functions. It's called NF Remote, and it's this great little Windows app that connects to the processor and really gives you a great feel for using it, just like being there. It also has something we call a wet voice detector that detects speech even on top of music, and processes that speech a bit differently than the music. This is one of the keys to getting the best results from speech versus music, if you can tell the difference and handle the processing accordingly for either way. It has a built-in speaker calibration tool to calibrate your own speakers that you're listening with, and multi-band downward expansion for fantastic noise reduction. This processor, the Omnia 7, is just amazing, and it starts, I want to say, in the neighborhood of $6,000. There's some options you can add to it, but this is a very, very affordable processor. Check with your favorite Omnia dealer to see what kind of price you can get on the Omnia 7. It is now shipping, and I just can't say enough good things about it. It's just amazing. Check it out online if you like at omniaaudio.com. That'll actually take you to the new Telos Alliance website. Click on Omnia Audio Processors and check out the Omnia 7 from Leif Clayson, Frank Foti, Rob Dye, Mark Manolio, and the whole team there at Omnia. All right. Thanks very much to Omnia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, it's episode 250. Chris Tobin is here, still on his balcony. Don't jump, Chris. It's going to be all right.
That's all right. No need. It's not that far. I probably just sprained an ankle.
Isn't this, talking to Rich, isn't this great hearing these stories?
It's great. You don't get to hear enough of these stories.
It's so different. I know. We need to figure out a way to talk to Rich for 2 or 3 hours over dinner and, after dinner aperitif and dessert, and keep on talking over coffee.
Come on up.
Come on up. Yeah. So Rich, are you going to be at NAB or the Public Radio Engineering Conference?
Not this year.
Okay.
I'm taking a break this year.
But
there's a lot going on, a lot of travel, and just, I talked to my boss and I said, there's a lot of things that need to get done, and I'd love to go, but I said, I think this year I'm going to take a pass on it. And she said, fine, and go next year. So.
Well, your buddy, Shane Tovin, asked me to participate on a panel with some other IP codec manufacturers. So we're going to be participating in Public Radio Engineering Conference that way ourselves.
Very good. Well, I'll have
Chris,
to watch the videos after.
Speaking of NAB, Chris Tobin, are you going to be at NAB this year?
I'm trying. I've got a schedule conflict that so far I've got a deadline to meet. If I can make it happen, I will. I'm not sure yet.
Well, I hope you are. If you are, I sure hope you can join us for This Week in Radio Tech, hopefully from the show floor as we did last year. That'd be cool to have you there.
Yeah, definitely.
By the way, speaking of IP codecs, I'm sorry, I missed this at the beginning of the show, and that is there's somebody on the show whose job it is, whose business it is to go help stations with their IP codec issues, with discovering, the right solution, helping stations to get great audio and even video from here to there, and saving money over older traditional methods. And that guy is Chris Tobin. Chris, tell us where people can reach you for your IP codec consulting services.
Support at ipcodex.com. I was just helping some folks in LA this week with an issue.
Support at ipcodex.com. That's plural, ipcodex.com. And I tell you what, Chris is the guy. He knows all about IP codecs, how they work, and how to make them work reliably. And being in New York City with a lot of pressure, and LA, I'm sure there's pressure there too, for broadcasts to come off correctly, to be reliable, to sound and look good. Chris has really got it down. He will not steer you wrong. All right. Rich Parker. Shall we continue? I wonder, what's our next bit of pictures that we might have available here? I should check my messages. The
Juneau. If you start on the Juneau sites, there's some interesting stuff. That's just a picture of me on the I don't know, on the beach.
Somewhere on the beach, getting
On
ready
the
to
beach.
swim with the sea lions.
Yeah. Well, you were asking me about saving the day kind of stories. Well, actually, this is a translator site. I came to this site and those hoods were not on. There's a picture before the hoods as the
Okay.
generator, but there was just if you flip through, I think you might find, or if you look for it, there's a picture with there's a couple of the Z's there. That's the one. Yeah, that's what it looked
Okay.
like and I was like, okay then. And that was the building was full of dust and white things, and there was a
Oh.
fan, and so that's me measuring. And somewhere in there, I'm sorry, they're not in good order. I had these fans hoods fabricated, so that's the exhaust. So there's not a filter on
Okay.
that. It's
Okay. So these are
blowing
hoods for the air intake and blowing out.
right,
Okay.
exactly. So that was the
Yes.
first one of the things I wanted to get done, and I got approval to do that. And now there's no more yellow dust all over the place when the pine trees, release their pollen. So that was
Oh,
really
that's
nice.
pollen. Okay. Okay.
So talking about KFSK and their Z4, what happened is the IP1D failed, which is the older pre-corrector device in the HD transmitters,
Mm-hmm.
and that particular model of transmitter, when it goes to a fault, the fan just goes on full blast. It sounds like a screaming, banshee, and it basically burned out the motor. So that was where I had to go back and get that motor replaced and all that. But one of the things we had to do was get that motor shipped up from Wrangell, and then I had to bypass the IP1D because it was broken, and it was a little bit of a dicey thing trying to get somebody from Harris to understand what I had to do. That I couldn't just get one sent up like a couple of days. So
Yeah.
we kind of bypassed it, but if I bypassed it completely, then it would stay an alarm, and then the fan would still run at full blast. So I had to kind of do this kind of jury rigging where I plugged it into the amp, which still worked. Anyway, it's probably more detailed than you want to know. But the point is I had to just really jury rig everything to get it back on the air and make it keep working. And then I remembered from the distant past that we had an IP1D, I think it's called, in Vermont, and we'd converted a lot of RZs to the next generation, and it had been knocking around in the shop, knocking around in his storage, and so I gave Mike Seguin a call and asked him, and he looked around, and he goes, "Yeah, it's here." So they were very generous, Vermont Public Radio, very generous. They sent it to us just for the cost of shipping because it had been probably sitting there for 10 years and not used. So it's in Petersburg now, waiting for me to go down there and put it in and get things back on the air. But again, that's the kind of thing that just, that's the kind of stuff that we have to do is just improvise. This picture that's right there, that's one of our small translators, and it's about, I want to say a mile and a half off the road between the North Douglas Highway and the water at the Gastineau Channel. And it's on this thing called muskeg, which is kind of like a dense patchwork of sort of muddy, like bog and moss and, and short, small growth. And when you walk, you really want your boots because at one point I think I was all of a sudden like walking in snow up to my knees in mud and muck. And that's the shelter that is an old shelter. We had to get the guy wires redone. Had to get those done about every couple of years because everything just sinks. That's I think it's Adam from Nolan Brothers, and he's up on the tower. And this shot is a different shot. This is another transmitter. This is one I had to walk. You had to walk about a mile and a half, 2 miles up to the top, and there's an FAA tower there in the background.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
over the airport. Yeah, that's overlooking the airport. And that one just got out of place because that's the other translator, and that's him standing on the top. I'm
What's
looking. Okay, so that's okay. He's standing on the top. There's a receive antenna, and I'm trying to get a bearing on it, and I'm hollering at him over the radio, and he's moving it so I can get it oriented to the right direction to the station because we couldn't see the station from there. So it's a receive.
Gotcha.
Right. So that's some of that. There's 2 of those towers up there, and they have to keep going out and re-anchoring I mean, they're essentially just sort of big like screws in the mud, as deep as they can get them. So, and that's just that's kind of a funny. That's kind of how church is up here. That's coffee time. There is they have an espresso machine for coffee.
Yeah.
Everybody drinks espresso up here. So that's the translator site up on top of what we call Peterson Hill, and there's a lot. We have several tenants up there. Some small stations, Christian broadcasters, Wi-Fi people, and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of it's a little bit overloaded. It's kind of a mess, but it's there it is.
Wow. Wow.
And flip some of these here. I think I'm trying to think where. Yeah, just yeah, that's that same site. So just
You
that's
make
how
it
I get
look
the,
like vertical real estate is pretty precious there.
it can be. Yeah, it really
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
Was
that's
it?
just from my deck the other night. That was Sunday night. To give you an idea of some of the things that we see here.
You need to make a long exposure to catch the northern lights like that?
I did. I caught that's about a 4 second exposure at
Okay.
f
Beautiful.
2.8. Yeah, that's just the waterfalls, as some of the trails. So anyway, and there's the eagles and there's the fish. I mean, there's salmon spawning, and behind them was eagles. And that I thought that was real. And turns out it was another local ABC affiliate. They put an owl up there to keep the birds off the dish. That was very funny. So anyway, that's just that's my deck and a cup of coffee, my morning coffee, and
Nice.
a little quiet time there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew
Anyway,
says that's the end of that album.
yeah. Well, good. I think
Unfortunately, you sent me links to 5. I only sent Andrew links to 4, so I apologize
it's
for
all right.
that.
No, it's okay. That's yeah. That's the kind of, I mean, in the Juneau, if you want to open the Juneau one back up, or if it's Andrew can look. There's some old test equipment and there's some pieces of gear up in the Juneau site, but it may not. He may not have that
Yeah,
one. I don't know.
they're Andrew's closed out now. He's got to run. We're going to finish up with it with a
That's fine.
different
No worries
producer.
about it. No.
We're going to actually have to talk to each other for the next few minutes.
Oh, I know we do. No, it's fine. It's fine.
So,
So that's like I said, the challenges are logistical, and you have to do a lot of MacGyvering and trying to be creative and scratch your head and go, well, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna make it work? Sometimes what needs to happen, and what you could do, but you go, I don't have that. I don't have that here, and I won't be able to get it for months or weeks.
Speaking of MacGyvering, as you call it, is a good word. Is this something that you had much experience at before, or are you having to draw out new skills and think out of the box that you didn't have to before, because when you lived in the contiguous states, stuff was available pretty much overnight? How's your thinking process changed up there?
Well, let's just start with going to a site. Going to a site, I can take 3 bags on Alaska Airlines, and they have to be 50 pounds or under. And so I've spent up to 2 hours at night with a scale, moving tools from one bag to the other and trying to figure out how to get that together. And then finding out what tools you really, really need. I mean, a lot of the sites in Vermont, we had tools either on the back of the snowmobile with us, or there was whole toolkits up in the station, up at the transmitter. So that's a bit of a challenge, just trying to figure out how to winnow down your toolkit to what's really essential, start to figure out what's available at other sites that you don't have to carry, and then figure out how to get it there. And sometimes you just have to ship, airship something, a crate with tools or equipment. There's a lot of cross-pollination between stations. They're all independent stations, but they're members of what's called Coast Alaska. So we provide engineering, the back end, office support. In other words, like fundraising, personnel, and that kind of stuff, all comes out of here in Juneau at Coast Alaska. And so, just like Cindy was able to go out and get that fan off of that Z4 for her colleague up in Petersburg, there's a lot of that kind of cooperation that goes on among these small stations. Very small stations, very small budgets, and a lot of volunteers and a lot of great people that love radio.
Chris Tobin, this just seems like so different from the kind of engineering that you and I both do, but especially you're in the market number 1. And I mean, heck, right now you're on a big, tall building and there's skyscrapers around you. What do you want to ask Rich that contrasts with what you and I are used to?
Wow. I've worked in a couple of markets where things were sparse, but nothing to the degree that Richard goes through. I mean, just the fact that, let me put it this way. I have had to travel with news divisions from some of the networks to breaking news stories. So the packing for an airplane and having weight restrictions, I can appreciate what he's talking about. So you're going to cover a plane crash or the death of a princess, and they tell you, look, you can only take 1 box or 2 road cases, and you better keep it under a certain weight. You're going to a place to cover a story. You're like, okay, what do I bring? What do I do? So now you're talking a transmitter site. As we all know, transmitter sites have a myriad of various things that can go wrong. And, 3/8-inch wrench is something you need and you don't have. It's like, wow, now what? That's a challenge. And what he's talking about in the physical, I guess, the geographic spans between your sites, that's, wow. I mean, I could see just getting up in the morning going, oh, what? I got to go to the transmitter. Now what? No, that's a tough. No, you got it down to a science, it sounds like, or at least you could appreciate what you need to do, and you have people that you can work with that get it. So that's very handy.
Yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. I mean, I've been here a year, but it's just every time I go out, I go, well, okay, I didn't even touch that last time, so maybe I can leave this out. Or, well, you know what, I saw one of those there, so I don't need to carry that. Or, that's a big fishing town, and they've got the most amazing hardware stores I've ever seen anywhere.
I bet.
It's like
Yeah.
it's crazy, but it's like you talk about tools, and I'm like, well, I had to work on the satellite dish in Sitka, and I didn't have quite what I needed. I walked, there was like a True Value or something, and they had like every size wrench you could ever want, and really nice one. And it was like, well, okay, so I went and got some wrenches, and I left them at the station, and now next time I go there, they'll be there. So it's an iterative process. It certainly is. Kirk, as you were saying, how do I think different?
Uh-huh.
It is a lot of like what Chris was saying and what you were saying. It's just trying to imagine, like, well, nobody's going to come bail you out. I have to say that my colleagues on email and PubTech and the Facebook Take Pictures of Transmitter site and some of those things, those are really just invaluable, because there'll be times when I'll just get in a, like, well, what do I do with this? And somebody will usually have a pretty good suggestion. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And that's, gosh, I just can't imagine, doing it without the kind of the cloud of witnesses behind me that are doing that, helping out. So.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't know what to ask. Oh yeah, here's the last thing on my mind. How do you feel about the stress level? You used to take care of a number of transmitter sites and studios in a state, and it wasn't for a commercial broadcast, public broadcaster. And I think the situation varies, contrasting the pressure level there. But do you have a different kind of pressure? Do you at the end of each day, can you pretty well breathe easy and say, I did a good job today? How does it affect your thinking about work in general to work where you are now?
It's interesting that you asked me that. I know a lot of my colleagues are in situations where they really do a good job, and they still come home feeling like, well, all they want to know is, what have you done for me lately? And maybe don't feel quite as appreciated as they really should, given their talents and their efforts. That's not always the case, but I hear it a lot. Here, it's I'll get off a plane, go to a site, and I'll be greeted with hugs, literally, from the station people and the managers. Oh, we're so glad you're here. Here's a list of things that have been bugging us. We're trying to fix them. Thank you for helping us over the phone. It's a very, very different environment from anything that I've ever experienced. It's gosh, it feels good to be wanted and liked and appreciated. It feels great, I can tell you.
Wow. I wonder, boy, you kind of wish managers and program directors, in other places could hear you say that. That's what a lot of people, we want, we need out of our jobs, is appreciation for what we do.
Yeah. Well, it's true, and I appreciate them, and they know it. And I think the second piece of it, because of the way that things are here and the way people are, I started this job, and I made it very clear to all the managers that I'm the engineer, but I'm here to help you and do what I can for you, but I also want to empower you as much as possible, because you're smart people. And what I mean by that is, I don't want them sitting by the phone going, well, we're off the air and I don't know what to do and I can't get a hold of the engineer. I've given them a lot of tips and tricks and tools and things in their toolbox that they can try, and workarounds. And when they get a hold of me, we can talk through some more. But these are just really a unique breed of people up here, and I like I like helping them. The program director in Ketchikan is a woman who's like gone to some SBE training in Alabama, and she wanted to learn more about engineering, and she'll take apart I have a small BW 600 watt transmitter that they use for backup, and she's got no problem taking that apart and replacing the encoder wheel in the front, and those kind of things. It's just really cool. It's kind of like being a teacher, a mentor, a helper, and yet sometimes there's just things that only I can do. So it's a great mix. The stress is having to travel sometimes, having to go away. A little bit of stress of like, boy, I could help them if we just had some more money for blah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that's hard sometimes to go, well, okay, we don't have that, so what can we do? how can we make it work? But I kind of like figuring things out. I mean, you asked me about out of the box. I know my son, when he was still alive, he used to say, "Dad," and he came to NAB. Some of you met him. He came to NAB a couple times and worked with a number of people in audio engineering and great kid. But he used to look at me and go, "Dad, you talk about people saying like, you think outside the box." He goes, and you're just like, "Oh, what box?" you know. And I guess he's right. I think that sometimes I don't. Maybe I can do what I do because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be able to do that. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
Hey,
like for instance, something as crazy as making a fiber attenuator out of a 3/8 dowel and some black tape.
yeah, who would have thought? I guess it's the curving over and over again that the light says, "Hey, wait a minute, whoa, whoa." Wow.
But anyway.
Hey, Rich, if I could pose upon you, think of a tip, an engineering tip that you'd like to leave with our viewers and listeners. And we're going to get to it right after our last commercial announcement. Chris Tobin, if you can think of one too, that would be great. A tip that people could walk away with, maybe something you've figured out, found out, or discovered in the last week or two would be great. Or maybe something that you've always done, but you're kind of surprised that other engineers don't. Could be very helpful. Our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Axia and the new Axia Fusion console. The Fusion is, well, it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful looking piece of equipment. It's an absolutely gorgeous console made with some real premium materials. I mean, the way it's engineered, just from a mechanical point of view, it's very interesting. It's a thing of beauty. The entire top surface is machined aluminum. It's not sheet metal. It's machined aluminum. All the paint markings on it, all the things that look like, all the markings on the faders, where the on and off buttons are labeled, all this is not paint at all. It is it's laser etched, and then it's double anodized on top of that. And that means that these markings won't ever rub off. They can't rub off. They're permanently there. The console will look as new. To clean it up a little bit, the console will look as new 10 years from now as it does today. The light bulbs won't burn out. They're LEDs. They last hundreds of thousands of hours. One of the striking things about this console, the Fusion from Axia, is the OLED displays that are on every single fader channel. So these OLED displays, of course, show you the channel number. They show you the name of the source that's on that channel. They also show you an icon if you're talking back to that channel. They'll show you that you're talking back to that channel. So you push a talk back button, and it shows you, hey, you're talking to this guy, or this satellite feed, or this IFB, this codec, this hybrid. And then here's the cool part. On every fader channel in that OLED area, there are confidence meters for both the incoming audio, so you can see pre-fader level, is there audio there, how hot is it, and if it's a source that has a back feed going to it, like a codec, a hybrid, maybe a reporter coming in by satellite, if you're a TV station, and the audio, the IFB is going back out to the reporter via a telephone hookup, that's metered also in real time. There's a outgoing level meter as well for everything that has a back feed to it. Could also be a talent in the studio with headphones on. They could say, hey, I'm not hearing myself. You can look and see. Well, it's because I'm not sending you anything, or it's because your volume's turned down. Turn it up, dude. So the Fusion console offers all of these kind of things with that OLED display. The Fusion console, like the Element, is available anywhere from a couple of faders, I think 4 or so. You could probably build one with 6 faders or 4, all the way up to 40 faders. Now you need a split frame to do that. That is 2 frames, and you can have up to 40 faders with the Fusion console. Huge amount of V mixers, virtual mixers, are built into the mix engine now. So you can have 16 V mixers, each one with 5 inputs. You can use these for a fixed V mix to mix things together that don't change, or you can also control them in real time with an app from BSI, or with a little applet that runs in Windows from us, from Axia, along with the Pathfinder software that's included. So all these features and very effective record mode, very effective backfeed modes. If you do any kind of complicated remote broadcasts, outside broadcasts, well, this console will give you precise control over the feed that's going back. Maybe on the left channel to the remote site, you feed, play program audio all the time, a clean feed, if you will. And on the other channel, you have a chat channel going back and forth with the talent at the remote site and your own talent or operator at the studio. So many possibilities, so well built. I'd really like you to check it out. This is a premier audio console, and hey, available in small sizes to big sizes. So whatever you need, you've got it there. It's on the web. It's at the Telos Alliance website. Click on the Axia area and then click on the Fusion AOIP mixing console. Now shipping. They have been seen in the wild. I think there's about 25 or 30 of them out there now, and some beautiful ones going into San Francisco. We've had a couple of pictures of those, and we'll try to show you more in coming weeks. Check it out, the Fusion AOIP console. Oh, there's videos on the website as well. You can click on those and have Clark Novak take you through a lot of the features of the Fusion console. Thanks a lot to Axia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And without further ado, let's see if Rich Parker, we can put him on the spot and give us a tip for the show.
Wow, that's a little pressure there. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I will tell you that the biggest thing that you can do for yourself as an engineer and for your clients, for the people that you work for, is to trust yourself, trust your instincts, and the knowledge that you've gained over the years. But also, don't be afraid to ask for help. I've gotten such great help, as I said, from my colleagues. I've gotten great help from vendors. I've talked to people who have spent like all night at a transmitter site trying to figure something out. And maybe because I didn't think I was like that great an engineer, I would be up at a transmitter site for 20 minutes and I'd pick up the phone and call the manufacturer and go, I'm seeing this, what's going on? And 9 times out of 10, it was like, oh, well, that's good. I can do that. That's easy. I mean, you don't want to necessarily make a pest of yourself. But as a friend of mine, Doug Mitchell, who's a trainer at NPR, says, don't be the smartest guy in the room or you won't learn anything. So I think that's the number one thing you can do for yourself as an engineer. Don't feel like you have to be the smartest guy in the room. You probably are on a lot of levels. But there's a different kind of smartness that allows you to get help, to find the information, to find the people that can do what needs to be done, and to trust your colleagues, because a lot of times they do want to help, they do want to get involved, and they do want to understand. And they like to be told what's going on because they don't want to be kept in the dark.
Great advice. Great advice. Don't be afraid to ask directions. But I like your advice too. Don't be a pest. In other words, have all the information you can garner together, including, if you're calling a manufacturer, serial number and, a description of what it's doing. Not that it doesn't work, but well, how doesn't it work? How is it deviating from the way it's supposed to work? Great advice, Rich. Thank you very much. Chris Tobin, what have you found in the past couple of weeks? What would you like to pass along?
Well, actually, it's funny you should ask, because about a week and a half ago, I got a call from someone to help them with an Intraplex T1 frame, and they needed to do some programming and check some stuff out on the frame, and couldn't figure out how to connect to it. Why? Because it uses a serial interface on the older frames. So what I've had over the years is a little bag, and in this bag are serial cables. So you have a standard male to female extension cable is stuck, as you see there. And then you have you make your own version of the Intraplex connector. So you have a RJ11 on one side, DB connector on the other. And it's always handy to have a loop back just in case you're trying to test something and make sure your serial connection is working properly. So you make a loop back connector using a standard phone jack. And you label it with the pinouts so you know what you're doing in testing. And then you have, lately, you have a Cisco switch. Guess what? You can telnet into the switch if you know the password it's working, or you can do a console connection, which happens to be serial. But you got to make sure you have the Cisco cable, or you properly pin out the RJ45 to a Cisco DB connector. Then you say to yourself, wait a minute, how do I plug things in and unplug them? Greenie, make sure the greenie is in the bag. You'll need it for the connectors.
Yeah.
But then there's the million-dollar question. Wait a minute. I'm running a Windows 8.1 laptop. There is no such thing as a serial port on them anymore. That is correct. So you make sure you carry the USB to DB9 serial adapter.
Oh, yeah.
Now you have yourself a nice little serial kit. And believe it or not, I have used this about a half a dozen times in the last year. So it's amazing the number of things that's still serial control that are in radio stations and TV. And people just panic. I literally was working with a gentleman back in November, at a TV facility. We're doing some IP video, and one of the boxes he was testing out, the only way you can program and talk to it was with the DB9 serial connection.
Wow.
He panicked.
Yeah.
He panicked. He's sitting there with a MacBook going, now what do I do? I said, well, hang on a second. Let me see what I got in my bag. Oh, yeah, how about that? Look at this. Let's plug it in and see what happens. So that's my tip. Put together little kits that you know you'll need for the equipment you have. Just as Richard said that when he's traveling, he has to make sure he figures out what he needs, what's most important. Put these kits together, keep them with you, or store them at the transmitter site or studios. And just remember that take nothing for granted these days. There's always going to be some legacy device you're going to come across.
It's a great idea. No, I've got most of the stuff that you just pointed out, but I don't have it in a kit. It's scattered in a drawer and in a toolbox and in a bag. So that's a great idea. Little prep work, just like Richard was talking earlier, right? A little prep work before you go to a site that's hard to get to.
Yeah, even if it's a site that's easy to get to.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, guys, we got to go. I want to thank Andrew Zarian for producing most of the show. I believe Suncast is at the controls now. Thanks very much. And thanks also to our sponsors, Lavo and the Crystal Clear virtual radio console. Also, the Omnia 7, the new audio processor popularly priced from Omnia, and the Axia Fusion AOIP console. I mean, it is the ultimate console. It's amazing. Check them all out, and be sure you tell your friends about This Week in Radio Tech. If you want to send us an email, no problem. You can do that from the This Week in Radio Tech website. I think you can probably also email thisweekinradiotech@gmail.com. I'll get it. And or you can send it to me at kirk@harnack.com. That's fine, too. I'll get your email that way, too. Remember, I get no spam. So appreciate Rich Parker. Thank you for taking a couple hours out of your day from Juneau, Alaska. Thanks for being here, Rich.
Thank you for having me, Kirk. Enjoyed it. And Chris,
Right.
good to talk. Good to hear from you.
Thanks for all those pictures, too. It's really interesting. Chris Tobin, appreciate you. And if people want to reach you, it is what? Support at where?
Support at ipcodex.com.
Thanks a lot. All right. We'll see you guys next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.